without further ado, I'd like to introduce Stanley. Stanley will doing some phenomenal work in Ladakh, but today he's going to talk about a contrarian view on Ladakh tourism. You know, and I found that very interesting in the conversation I heard it. Over to Stanley.
So, thank you so much.
Stanzi.
Stanzin is sound.
Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. So, good evening, everyone. So, the background to this presentation is that some time ago, I met Shobha in the context of me wanting to join RARE. At that time, Shobha was quite in dilemma. On the one hand, she wanted to onboard property like me from Ladakh. At the same time, she was really genuinely worried about our tourism, the environmental problem in Ladakh. Right? Like Shobha, whenever we go outside Ladakh, the one thing that we face from everyone is that, yeah, you know, you have this problem of environment, our tourism, and things like this. And so in that context, you know, we knew it for a long time that this was in general perception in the market. What I didn't know was that this perception has become such a solid reality that it starts to impact the business decisions of people like Shobha. And at that, this conversation was very short, and I sort of immediately told Shobha that this is not correct. You know, I threw some number at her, and of course she was not that easily convinced, and I think perhaps still not convinced. And then Shobha said, okay, sound interesting, tell me more. So here I am today to tell you more about Ladakh and our tourism. So if you Google, do a research on Ladakh and tourism, so of course there are some good articles about Ladakh, but predominantly most of these articles are quite negative, right? The waste problems in Ladakh, the water crisis in Ladakh, the glacier melting, the toilet problem, the compost toilet problems, and culture dyings and delusion and so on and so forth. That's one part. And somehow all of this problem is rooted to just one singular problem. Too many people visiting that beautiful small Ladakh, right? And therefore all this problem. Now, generally in life, you know, whenever something is singular, absolute, categorical, that tend to be sort of very oversimplification of a very complex problem, and therefore grossly wrong. So I think similar is the case with Ladakh. Let's see some number. So the first question is it really true that far too many people visiting Ladakh? So the first is, this is the tourist footfall of the last 50 years. Somebody just asked me, I gave this presentation to the press, what is the source of this data? This is the data from the government. Because one thing with the Ladakh is there's only one entry initially through airport, and everybody need to register. So from that point of view, you have a good data on number of tourists visiting to Ladakh. So if you look at that, it's pretty impressive, right? Good growth, 3 idiots, this big jump there. So last 50 years, average annualized growth rate is 17%. That's impressive, right? Not 1 year. 50 year, 17% growth rate. But that's in rate. But if you look at an absolute number, the highest number of tourists that we ever received was 5 lakh something. And the last season was 3.7. Now, this is the number of weekend numbers and monthly number for other tourist destination. And yet, sort of Ladakh get that level. Now, let's compare this number with the other tourist destinations of world and India. For example, Switzerland, half of Ladakh. People think of Leh as small, right? Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Ladakh was the 70% of Jammu and Kashmir. Really huge. So Switzerland is just half of Ladakh. And for a donkey's years, they have been receiving some 39 million, 20 million tourists. Similar landscape as Ladakh, glacier, and so on and so forth. But you don't get so many bad articles about Switzerland, climate change, Switzerland, glacier melting, so as much as the Ladakh does. Singapore, a fraction of Ladakh land mass, yet such a number. Similar to the story about other. But in Ladakh, 60,000 square kilometers, just 500,000. So per square kilometer, just 8 people. That for 5 days. Right? That low. And I looked at this number at other tourist destinations of the world, of India, and Ladakh is among the lowest. Somehow yet we earn this reputation of being hourly crowded. Right? So that's on the side of number of people coming. Now let's go a little deeper, how this number is distributed across different months. Now, this is the last year data of all the tourists that visited Ladakh. 41% of them came to Ladakh in the month of June. Now, I know many of you said that is the problem, but from Ladakhi point of view, that is not a problem. The other months are a problem. I'll tell you later. We locals are really happy about it. I know many people say, oh, that's a problem. And later on, I'll tell you why this is a problem, others are not. Now, that's so far, let's see, from the footfall point of view, you see these numbers are not as high as you are made to believe, right? Now, what about from the capacity point of view? Do we have a capacity to handle more tourists? On that question, number one, let's look at the three levels, right? At environmental level, what is the environmental carrying capacity? How much tourists can we handle? The fact on this question is that there is no assessment done by anyone. But you get a lot of opinion on it. It's just speculations. The fact is there's no study done. One should do. When they do it, I'm sure the number would be very high because of the just mere sheer size of the Ladakh, right? That's one. Number two, at public infrastructure. From infrastructure point of view, how much tourists can you handle? For example, Singapore, right? Such a small, yet no problem of our tourism because infrastructure is good, governance is good, so able to manage everything. So you don't feel that problem. Now what about Ladakh? Here, before UT, there was an infrastructure problem, but I think after the formation of Union Territory of Ladakh, at least the infrastructures are really changing fast and good quality infrastructure coming up. And the third is, how about the private infrastructure, the taxi, the beds? Are we able to handle more tourists? So this is again the data from the tourism department. Number of beds that we have per month, existing one, okay, is 8 lakh. If you include the unregistered one, might be more than 10 lakhs. So if you do this sort of what we do in our hotel industry, occupancy, like the Ladakh occupancy is just 15%, that low. Now that 15% of course not equally distributed. People like me has 70, 80% occupancy. Most people who are here from Ladakh have a very high occupancy. And normal people who do not have a reach out to social media and others have really, they build these hotels from their selling everything and hoping that they'll get a good money from tourism, just all empty, empty, empty. So therefore, I would like to say that Ladakh being the case of our tourism is kind of true for most of you, and many, I think, will continue to do so for some time. But if you look at it objectively, through fact and figure, this is not true, right? So today the time is really short, so I have to cover some other topics, so we'll leave it at that, and happy to engage more on that. Now you may say, okay, Stanzin, you are throwing some numbers from somewhere which we need to verify, but what about the problem that we see for ourselves? I've been to Ladakh, I see the waste problem, I see the glacier melting, I see the water. How can you deny those, right? So let's go to those questions. So these are the, first I want to address the problem of water, because lately the water of Ladakh getting a lot of attention, glacier melting, so on and so forth, save Ladakh, save Himalaya. These are the, like, so many articles. I just honestly randomly pick some, not the dramatic one necessarily. So for example, tourist magnet Ladakh facing water scarcity. Ladakh facing is worse water crisis, better India. Leh may have to survive on a bottled water. Very dramatic articles about Ladakh. And as a tourist, you feel then, should I really go to Ladakh and those, and to sort of harm the local people and their water resources. Now, that's sort of the media, the sort of truth been pushed. Now, what is the reality on the ground? So the government did this study. I was involved in this study. There was an officer called Dr. Saida Bano. Then, this is 5 years back. She was the head of the municipality. She was the head of the tourism department. Then it was the JNK. So she was getting a tremendous pressure from the top to solve the problem. And she said, I need to solve the problem. And we were sitting in the room. And I said, this article sounds so much story. Let's look at number. So we did a very interesting study wherein we challenged ourselves that we'll do a study which is free of opinion, just as a matter of fact study. Is there a water crisis in Ladakh? If yes, how big the crisis is so that we can solve it. What we found out was very interesting. there is no water crisis at all. If there is anything, that's a management crisis. I mean, that's a very big statement. Why so? Because Ladakh is strangely a desert with water. Right? You don't have a desert, ironically. It's a desert full of water. So, for example, every village has a perennial source of water. Underground water level is very high because all these glacier waters are sort of percolating down. And then Leh ends with this mighty Indus River. My Valley ends with the Shyok, and all the rivers are there. So therefore, we are surrounded with the water. The only problem is that there's no pipe to supply the water. So it was a management crisis, not a water resource availability crisis. And now, you've seen some environmentalists from Ladakh saying, we are the source of water for 2 billion people. It is in your interest to save Ladakh. So save Ladakh, save Ladakh. And that's really pushed strong. Now, today onward, also watch carefully sometime what else he says. And they also say that, oh, we are in desert, water scarce region. We use only 20 liters of water, dry toilets. And these tourists come and use 120 liters of water and therefore get disturbed. So please behave responsibly in Ladakh. Use less water, use compost toilet. Now the question there is, if you are a source of water for 2 billion people, why do you are living with 20 liters of water? Just 300,000 people. Same question for tourists. If we are a source of water for 2 billion people, then what is the problem in giving water to 4 lakh tourists for 3 days, or 4 days, or 5 days? Right? So I really believe the truth is more on the side of we are a source of water for billions of people. Yeah? The water per se is not a problem. It's just the management. And most other cities and towns in India do have similar problem. But there the problem is not just the management. It is actually water resource availability is a problem. So our case is quite different. Now there, when we sort of finished this study, there was a good IAS officer who is in Delhi now, Mr. Sahu. Then he said, interesting. Now I'm convinced. Earlier he was also thought there's a water crisis. When we did this study, he said, I'm convinced. Now, yeah, I realize we are just surrounded with water. Now I can just see water all over the place. But he said, there's one problem. These tourists come, stay in a hotel, use water closet, flush toilets, and they pollute the source of water that we have. So therefore, tourists has a role in water problem of Ladakh. Basically water contamination, underground water. So a lot of this report and news are on the underground water pollution. So he said, okay, right, sir, but let's again do a little more. This sounds like a story. Let's go into data. So we dig deeper into the data. And what we realized was that tourist contribution to underground water pollution was just 2%. Well, the blame is 100% on tourists. Right? Why 2%? Because tourists are small in number and they're just for just 5 days. Right? We local are there for 365 days. Indian Army, quite a big number, 365 days. Workers are there for 4 months. And, and then much bigger, quite a number. So therefore, this is the number. So tourist contribution to the problem of Ladakh is just 2%. But the media, you've seen those articles at the beginning? All tourists, blame is on tourists. So there was this problem there. Now we said, anyway, doesn't matter. No, I just don't want to talk about the problem. I'll also show you there's some slides that there are solutions there, and which is not just Ladakh, is gone across the India. For example, after this, then we said, doesn't matter now whose problem. The point is water is getting polluted. So we have to clean it, right? The septic tank was the problem. There was no sewerage in the town. So what we did was that, what is that we need to clean the septic tank? It just needs some suction truck, and a treatment plant. Now, only challenge was the septic tank is anaerobic process. Your STPs are aerobic. You can't mix these two. So at that point of time, there was no sludge treatment plant in this country. So help of many people, we at local NGO and others build this sludge treatment plant, this one. It was so easy. Just 43 days, this work is done. And we formed a company. I invested some money in it and also made some money out of it. And interestingly, this project was happening at the backdrop of Swachh Bharat. In Swachh Bharat, what we were doing was basically building a toilet. So open defecated toilets from the surroundings was coming inside the home, right? If you do a toilet. And then this pit was filling up. So sludge was increasingly, with the success of one Swachh Bharat, sludge was increasingly a problem. And somehow Bill Gates got an attention of it, and he said he's head of the mission to Leh and so, and later on with their help, now this Ladakh solution has gone to more than 700 towns and cities in India. So if you see this suction truck in a pretty organized way, the first solution, the first model was tried by the Hotel Association, our president is sitting here, and the municipality, and some of us together we did this one. Then, last bit on the water, some people said, there's still a problem with tourists coming to Ladakh. Really, because we use compost toilet, we are wiper, the toilets, tourists are washer, they use water system. The water system will not function in Ladakh because it's extremely cold. It will freeze. So even if tourists come, they should come only in the summer month, not in the winter. That sort of argument was pushed. Then he said, that's kind of sound not correct because, Russia, Europe, Canada are much colder than Ladakh for a much longer time. I mean, they had this functional toilet for quite some time, so why can't we have it? And someone was saying, not possible, not possible, not possible. Then there was, again, some local NGO and some of us got involved, and we built these two beautiful toilets to showcase to the government and others that toilet system can work also in Ladakh. So this 5 year into operation, no problem, it worked. So last year, some people saying that, well, your toilet worked in Leh town when there's electricity, where there's a municipality, but it won't work in the Pangong, Nubra, and other location. So we did some jugaad-like situation. This is on the way to Pangong, the right third one. Border Road Organization and me together, we did this project. It do not exist on paper. We just did somehow. And now they're not calling it toilet. They're calling it Bro Cafe because it's beautiful. And the other one is in my village, the Hundar Sand Dune. The village kids have given some money and we did something. So anyway, the point is, this all too much of stories and little of substance there of the truth side. Now that's on the water. I'll quickly now cover the solid waste, right? Now water, solid waste in fact receive more attention than water because it's more visible, right? When you go to Ladakh, you see this dump, and that beautiful landscape, you see waste. Like other part of India, the plastics kind of get lost behind the tree. In Ladakh, there's no tree, nothing to hide, so one bottle of water just shines from a kilometer away to somehow, right? So it's very, very visible. So again, the, one second, go back. Okay, fine. Articles on solid waste is again very, very dramatic, and I would say this is a very iconic dump site, a very legendary. Legendary because 15 to 20 years, the environmentalists and we, the eco-business people, said, look, tourism is bad for Ladakh. Here is the real proof. Look at it. Like 5 kilometer stretch of this waste. We call it Bomghat. It's between the Leh and the Sabu. Right? And there's so hundreds of articles and videos on saying, here is the proof of how tourism is destroying Ladakh. So 15 years, just a cry and a cry and a cry, but no solution. So luckily, this time again, the Dr. Zaida Banu that I was telling you, this time she was promoted. She was the director urban at that time. She said, this time I have no money problem. Last time the money was always problem before UT. He said, I have enough money, so let's do it. So we got somebody from Pune to do the design, and then we tendered it. Nobody participated. Then I got one of my friends to do it. I said, it's very easy, just participate in tender and earn some money. So he participated, and it just took us 7 months to clear this problem for which the people, especially many journalists, environmentalists, sort of cried for a good 10 to 15 years. Right? So easy. And the second point is, now I think it's more than a year since it is clean. Not a single reel, not a single video, not a single article telling tourists, now don't feel guilty about visiting Ladakh. The garbage is no more. Right? So that's on the solid waste side. Now, and also quite Leh-centric topic. Now I want to, one slide, take you to my village, which is the sand dune area where you do this camel ride. So that is one of the top 3 destinations of Ladakh. Any tourists come, they go to the Sham area, then they come to Nubra, then they go to Pangong. Now, in that village, we are like about 400 household. Of that 400 household, only half of them have some guest house, hotel, or something to relate it with the tourism. Right, sir? Of that, only 30 are built structure. Rest is just sort of this temporary tent, really bad quality one. Right? And of that 30, 20 are my cousins and other 10s are friends. So the point that I'm making you is that there's so little tourists that is touching only few people. This is the situation of the main destination. Right? Other village, if you go 1 kilometer away from Hundar, not a single guest house, no source of income for them. Yes, directly they may have a shop, a taxi driver or something, but in a meaningful way, the way it touched my family life is really limited. Right? So that's one problem. Number two, let's say this is the main tourist village of Ladakh, right? The main, and Ladakh is one of the top destinations of India. So usually a top tourist destination has many cafes, many bar, many restaurants, But how many bar in my village? How many restaurants? Not a single bar, not a single restaurant, not a single cafe. Why? There are people like me who wants a lot of money, many. Right? Why we are not doing it? Because where is the number? Tourists come for a June, some number and sort of disappears. So there's really not that economy of scale. There's not that critical mass. You need some number to have business. So the number is actually not there. So you're just made to believe as if Ladakh is like full of tourists. This is the situation of the main village. Now, third thing, from resource management point of view, Make My Trip, I do a lot of business with them. So they said that we'll give you money, why don't you do something for your village in Nubra, waste management, for the last 1 year. Government also said we'll give you money, do something there. But to this date, I couldn't do anything in my village. Problem was not money, not knowledge, not willingness. The problem was there's not enough flow of waste. Right? Just use some waste and after that no waste. So any functional system, leaving a mechanical, you need a critical mass of resources, right? That critical mass of resources is missing. So from here, the pointing to less tourism is a problem for a resource management and infrastructure than the more tourism. Now, conclusion, actually, there are 2 more slides after this. So conclusion is that water, waste, toilet, the problem that I've listed is not that that problem do not exist. That's not my point. That problem very much exists. That is a fact. What is not a fact, what is wrong is this attribution that, this interpretation that this is because of tourism, right? Tourism is only 2%, the storytelling part. Maybe a bit of digression on the storytelling part. I work with the Germans for a good 15, 20 years. In this German world, there's this problem and then there is solution. Now, last 4 years, I'm into this hotel sustainability business. And here I see there are 3 things. There's a problem, and then there's storytelling, and then there is a solution. Now, even more interesting, the problem is very small. The storytelling part is really big, and solution is often sort of a very little solution. A lot of my well-wishers, ever since I started the business, have been telling me, Stanzin, you should do more storytelling. Right? You're missing on that. This business is all about storytelling and storytelling to an extent that now even my mobile, I don't know how he got that thing. This Salman Rushdie yesterday, last few days was telling me storytelling is very important, very important. So I'm now almost falling into that pressure, maybe looking for somebody who could help me with the storytelling bit. But on serious note, let's say without storytelling, things also works, right? For example, I don't have any PR team. I don't have anyone to manage my social media. You don't see any of such stories on it. Yet, I think I have a highest occupancy rate in Ladakh. I have a highest, perhaps, ARR, average room revenue in Ladakh. That is because I think just kept focusing on product. The storytelling somehow happened as a byproduct. So the point is, I know this word storytelling so much that somewhere something maybe taken too far, right? The good and bad is matter of a dose, right? Not the substance. So maybe too much of storytelling in here also. Now, sorry, that was in digression because the storytelling just took me there. Number 3, the reason why the problem still exists in Ladakh is basically the system is not in place. Right? That is the reason, not tourists. If tourists do not come, 0 tourists, problem will be there. It's just that 2% less, or maybe 3% less. That's it. The problem would be there. So that's it. And the why system is not placed? Because the critical mass is missing. I think is my last slide. Yes. Now, last question is, who is behind this wrong storytelling, right? Linking Ladakh problem to tourism. In my opinion, this story originates from people like us who's into a sustainability business, right? More we cry bloom and gloom, things are dying, somehow the relevance for our business increases. Therefore, I'm solution, do a business with me. I think perhaps in Ladakh, even outside to some extent, I see that this all, our sustainability is so much driven by the storytelling part, right? Perhaps for the reason that the terms are changing, the plot, the jargons are changing, substance-wise, maybe not much is changing. Regenerative travel to, last 5 years I've heard many terms, immersive, but all pointing to same thing, right? So at subjectivity level, lot of variation, lot has moved. But if you move beyond this subjectivity and try to look at the objective problem, nothing much has changed. For example, in name of sustainability, what do? I have a stabilized mud brick. That was a 25 years old invention from the ROL. Right? Then a lot of we Ladakhi take pride in doing this solar passive walls. That is some American scientists' work in Ladakh some 40 years back. So there is a question on we, the sustainability players of Ladakh, that it seems we're giving an impression that so much is changing in the sustainability space, but substantially speaking, not yes, in terms, lot has changed. In stories, lot has changed. But in terms of substance, what is it that changed? Right? I think we have left the storyteller kind of free, without a boundaries, without a check. Therefore, the other days, the person from the Sixth Sense, when he said there's need for a standard, I sort of really connected with that idea that Shobha has also said, something can be measured and should be measured, and something cannot be, that we can also say this one also, something like that. So that brings me to this one idea that, as an example, this is a 2 hotel. One is my hotel, Stonehedge. The other one is a Grand Dragon. Now, if I ask you which one is more sustainable, what would potentially your answer be? Sorry, Dragon is also here. Maybe you may not answer. So I know if I ask anybody, even the local one, invariably they will say that, yes, Stonehenge is much more sustainable, whereas Dragon may not be. Is not, they will say. Now, at the subjective, at the perception level, at the subjectivity level, is true that everybody believes I'm sustainable, well, Dragon is not. But I won't really be surprised if tomorrow somebody were to do an objective study. Who is more sustainable? If Grand Dragon were to be more sustainable than me, I really won't be surprised, sir. Why? Because A, if I ask you why I'm more sustainable, people will say I use a stabilized mud brick. But for the structural integrity of the building, I still use 8% cement. Right, sir? But then how much cement does the concrete building use? Not 100%. The impression you give, perception that you create is as if the concrete building use 100% cement. That's lie. They use 13 to 14% cement. So the difference between that brown building and the white is just 5%, right? Then the second reason you may say you are sustainable because you are small. But then I operate 5 small hotels, same inventory as Dragon. So my building footprint is much more than the Grand Dragon, right? Therefore, my energy consumption would be much more. Now, I'm not here to sell Grand Dragon and do a branding for them. The point that I'm really driving home is that somewhere we need to move from this sort of storytelling to substance, subjectivity to objectivity. Yeah? I'm taking this liberty to say, because I'm new to this sector, I come from another world to your world. So then you get to sense, right, what is something wrong here. So only one thing that I'm not been so comfortable is this storytelling part, the whole thing, that somewhere, where do you put that boundary to storytelling, right? If it happens indirectly, that's fine, but there's all active storytelling, and we're crossing many boundaries somewhere there. So the last slide here is, yesterday I was speaking to Sumanna ji from Net Zero. She said, the problem of more is perhaps always better than the problem of less. No, I don't agree with the always part, so I just made a little edit. So which is perhaps better than problem of less. At least in the context of Ladakh, I'll definitely say our problem from the local point of view, the problem is not of our tourism, it's of less tourism. So here with an appeal that please don't stop your good-hearted client from going to Ladakh. Thank you so much.
One thing I can tell you, Stanzi, you're an excellent storyteller. I mean, I think that was a fabulous presentation by Stanzi, and the only thing that my submission to you is that the fact that when you cleaned that whole stretch, and the fact that your lament was that nobody knew about it, is all about the fact, then kind of circles back to the fact that there was a lack of communication, or the storytelling part of it, which you did so effectively for the last 30 minutes. So I think the fact is both are important. Any questions from the audience? Absolutely. I was wondering, how did a Ladakhi give such a data-backed presentation? Then I realized he said he worked with Germans.
Hi, my name is Danesh. I represent Grand Dragon. It's my family business.
Sorry.
So I'll tell you something.
They're not sustainable.
It was back in November, thanks to Travel and Leisure. They awarded us as the Sustainability Hotel. Even on the group of Rare, not even Shobha, sorry, but not even posted that, congratulations or something, because that's the reason, because every brown thing is sustainable and white is not. And probably the kind of sustainability or, eco-friendly, what we do, I don't think anybody in this hall is doing. I can challenge it to any hotelier. And we've been doing it not from today, from 2007 when we were launched. So I have a complete data, I have a proof of everything. So I think what he says, I totally agree to, everything brown seems sustainable and eco-friendly, and white doesn't. I think it's not the case always. Thank you.
So since you stood up and made a pitch for Grand Dragon, I completely agree, by the way, and I think it's a fantastic, and this is something that, so I'm here, my name is Hashim Tayyibji, I represent an organization called Indian School of Nature, and can I just tell both of you gentlemen, we have a completely free toolkit that will allow you to measure your emissions, your water use, your waste, and it's absolutely free, it's absolutely fantastic, and I would like you to use it so you can use those numbers and put it up there. Because that is exactly the message we've been saying to everybody. The stories are fine. Data matters.
Absolutely.
Numbers matters. The numbers tell a better story and a far more credible, convincing story. So enough with stories. Let's look at the numbers.
Thank you. So for the next bridge meeting, Grand Dragon and Stonehedge will come up with the numbers and then see who is. We'll really try and see that. Thank you.
Stanzin, just a quick question. When you cleared all that plastic, I may have missed what you said, but when you cleared all that plastic, what did you do with it? Where did all that waste go? How was it treated? Because, I've been traveling around India for the last 8 weeks, and it's a huge problem everywhere. So you cleaned it, but what happened to it? And can that be replicated elsewhere?
Yes. So it was a dump yard. Most of the waste was continuously burned. So it wasn't the regular composition of the waste. I think about 40% was just the sort of dust and soil. So we did this sort of mechanical separation of it. And then some bit was this sort of reusable commercial things, so that we sold it to they sort of informally sold it to the rag pickers, and they took it to Srinagar and other places. And then some good 30% chunk is still lying there compacted, because we call it rejected and refuse waste that has no commercial value. So initially there was intended to burn it at the plasma 1000 degrees Celsius and above temperature, but something wrong in that tender happened. So it's still lying there waiting to be. The two options we have, one is to send it to a cement factory in Srinagar or Manali. The other one is to bring a machine which burns things at a very high temperature. We don't want smoke to come. So at 1000 degree and above, the smoke emission would be very little. So somewhere is there. Thank you.